All right, so today's Saturday, May the 16th, and I'm with Justin Smith from El Paso, Texas. How do you pronounce the name of your church? Cielo Vista?
Cielo Vista,
Okay,
yes,
that's awesome.
means heavenly view.
Oh, my goodness.
Heavenly,
Wow.
yeah.
And I guess most of the people there are Spanish speakers?
As bilingual,
Yeah.
lot of bilingual.
Are you bilingual?
I am not. I would like to say I am. I can speak a little, but I would not say I'm bilingual.
I can say Donde es el baño or something like that. A few little
See,
Spanish words, yeah.
yeah.
Well, hey, I'm taping our interview today. That's okay with you, Justin?
Hmm.
All right. So let's
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about your role as a worship pastor there, and what's going on here at Grace Life. Tell me a little bit first about how you came to know the Lord and just the process of God calling you into ministry, and particularly your ministry there at Cielo Vista.
Well, I've grown up uh, in church and actually at Cielo Vista. So Cielo Vista's been my home for over 30 years. My father was the music director before I was. Um, I I developed my relationship with the Lord through different youth ministries, and through that I actually came to know the Lord on a at a youth camp. So I love the aspect of youth camps because they changed my life. And so it was seventh grade when I fully committed myself to the Lord.
Mm.
And then from that moment, that I came to know Him in a middle of a worship service. We were singing "Come Now Is the Time to Worship." And you guys can remember that song. Uh, and it was as if at that moment I knew my life would be tied to worship somehow, just because of that moment. And so seventh grade, gave my life to the Lord, was baptized later that year, and from seventh grade to about for my first year out of high school, I really, to be honest, didn't take my faith that serious.
Mm.
Had had moments of great times of the Lord, and then other moments of where I was being rebellious, and as a high schooler kid probably would be. And then right after high school, I went to Colorado Springs New Life. Um, it's a church. It's a large church that at the time had a school of worship, and I was part of the worship team throughout my high school time in the youth ministry. Played in the youth band. Was really starting to become the leader of the youth band, and I felt really unequipped to lead. So I asked our youth pastor. I said, "Hey, what are your thoughts on helping me attend this school in Colorado? And then after that, I would come back and be the youth worship leader." And he was all for it. And so that sent me on that journey to Colorado Springs. Spent a year there. It was a year-long program, and oh my goodness, that year changed my life for the better in so many ways, from friendships to just understanding of worship and different denominations. Cielo Vista Church is predominantly a Baptist church. Is kind of our roots and our doctrinal beliefs. New Life was more of a charismatic church, so I got to experience uh, and even within the school, one of our classes was studying worship throughout the denominations. So we went to different churches and got to experience their worship services, and that was impactful for me because one of the main lessons I learned from that lesson was so much of worship is within the denominations is predicated on preferences. And it's unique to see how God can still be worshipped in so many different ways, in different styles, different musics, different all that stuff. So after that year, came back led worship in our youth for about 2 to 3 years. I think it's 3 years. And then after that, my dad's role as music director shifted to the lead pastor role at our church. And with that role, he was the role of music ministry was then passed to a gentleman named Roderick Mendoza, who then hired me as an assistant. And then shortly after that, maybe a year, Roderick got married and actually moved cities. I got married that same year with my wife, Amy. That was 2013. And after that, the position was granted to me to be the music leader of the church. And I've been in that role since about then. I was ordained at the church just through the ordination process that Sila Vista has in place, which has different books, different studies that we went through, and also it's an ordination of life. They've been with me. They've seen my character. They've seen me. And so there was no hesitation in that ordination, and that happened 2 years ago, I believe, November 20th, 2018, I believe it was. And so I was ordained the worship pastor since 2018, and kind of functioned in that role ever since. Our church, as far as a communications role, our church recently went through a Auxano. I don't know if you've heard of the company Auxano. I think it's Mike Mancini. He wrote a book called Unique Church, and we read through that book. And Auxano is a company he developed that helped really formulate a church's vision and they call it their vision frame. And so, as a communications director, this was 2 years ago that they assigned that role to me. That my job there was to help communicate the new vision frame of our church, meaning mission statement, our values, our measures, and our core values. And so that's been a task that has been fun. With that came roles of handling social media platforms, our website, and overall just kind of communication between congregation and staff. And so yeah, that role, and that brings us up till now, where God on my journey. I've been attending all through that time. I've been attending full-time college, actual accredited college at GCU, Grand Canyon University. I started that in August 2017, and I'm on the dean's list there. I've got it's school has always been kind of difficult for me, but this form and this Grand Canyon, I've really enjoyed it and excelled in the grades, where before in my life I probably wasn't very much good at grades, but I was more into sports and all that stuff. So, but currently I'm in my third year, close to finishing my fourth, and this is kind of what's drawing me to Lynchburg and Christiansburg, is hopefully getting to a place of where attending Liberty is more possible.
Sure.
Rather than online. So yeah, that's kind of my journey up to this point.
And our connection is Steve Mueller, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
So Steve's a great guy. God used him, I think, in a great way here for us. And you've known the Mueller family for a while, I think.
Long time, yes. Steve, we've known him he's known me since I was probably, probably around my 7th grade or even before that.
Wow.
You've seen the whole journey.
Yeah. Well, it's unique to be in a place where you've grown up and served with family members. Your father-in-law now is your pastor.
Yeah, father-in-law.
Yeah. What do you see as challenges opportunities. I mean, what excites you and what scares you to death about coming out of that, into a role where that's not the case anymore?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think a lot of that in my life that has maybe brought a little security,
Mm,
knowing that my boss is related to me
yeah,
in a way, and not that I would abuse that in any
yeah,
shape or form. I would not take that for granted at all. But I think coming out of that, I think there's a little bit of, this is new waters.
mm,
This is uncertain. There's a little more uncertainty in it, which I think is, and I think at my point in my life, I think is healthy. I think I need some of that.
yeah, yeah.
I think at times we all need that.
Well, sure, yeah, that will be a challenge. I was my dad's youth pastor for a while. He was the interim pastor at this church. So there was about a couple of years there. I was there for 5 years. So a couple of years, my dad was the pastor, interim pastor. So yeah, that was unique. But yeah, it does provide a level of security that's not there when the next guy rolls around. So
Yes.
I get that. How have you managed? You're going to school. You're in a position where you're full time. So how do you balance that work, family, work life and family life, and now school life in the midst of that? You're obviously used to doing that, but that's not an easy thing.
It's not, and it's a lot of late nights doing schoolwork late at night. There's and my wife and my family's been very gracious, because there's times where uh, they'll go do something and I just can't, because I gotta finish an assignment, I gotta finish a paper or something like that. And so just from a couple of those aspects of it, late nights and my family being very gracious with me, really is how that kind of works and balances out. Ministry does kind of take the, outside of family, does take the priority over school. So at times, if I had a service late at night, I know I was going to have a service, maybe a Wednesday night or Tuesday night service or something that's going to keep me in the evening. I would know, okay, I've got to get my schoolwork done
Yeah.
at a different time.
Mm,
It's been very gracious of the staff at the church that I'm currently at, that would allow a little bit of work time to work on school. So if I'm reading or something, doing something, studying, because a lot of my degree is about spiritual formation. It's a Christian study degree. So I mean, it's benefiting my study, my walk, to do those assignments as well.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about just in being a worship leader in communications, a little bit how your workflow goes with that, how you manage that just from a Monday through Friday or Monday through Sunday, how that works where you are in that venue.
So before all of the COVID stuff, it was a little more structured, and it's still structured, but it's different tools now. But typically, on a Tuesday, we would have or I'd say this, on a Monday, I would meet with my worship staff, which is two people, two individuals, two assistants, and we would meet and we'd kind of debrief, if you will, the Sunday. Well, it went well. How were volunteers? We're all volunteer driven, being just the two staff and myself. How was the relationship? How are people? Is there anything we need to do to help people, from just different conversations,
Mm-hmm.
that they had? Then we'd get into logistics. How was the tech? What went right? What went wrong? How were musicians prepared? Get into kind of the nuts and bolts. Do we need to have a conversation with someone that says, hey, we need you to be a little bit more prepared in a certain area? And that would be Monday. And then from Monday, from that meeting, we would kind of come up with a game plan for that week of, hey, let's attack this problem, let's attack this issue, let's fix this, and then go from there. Then on Tuesday, we would have what I called my creative team meeting, which included both worship staff and and my communication staff. And that group grew to let me count. 1, 2, 3, about 8 of us. Some of them were part-time, so that was a little more difficult to make sure that they were there on Tuesdays. There's two right now. I have 2 full-time staff for communications and 2 part-time staff for communications. One handles more so interior design of the church, making sure that all the signs are in the right places, making sure all that's going on. And then one is primarily website or printed materials, and then one handles social media, and then the other one helps video production. And I kind of float between all of those and make sure we're all good and they don't need any help. If they do, I hop in and help. I'm able to handle all those. But from that meeting, we would talk through Sunday, and we would kind of go, what needs to be communicated from now till Sunday? What do we need to leverage the Sunday platform to communicate? What are other areas? What needs to be communicated throughout the church? And so there's a lady, Sylvia Calderon. She's really been extremely helpful. She's an extremely detailed person that has helped control the flow of all the announcements and stuff like that.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what that. So that was Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were typically days executing what those meetings produced.
Okay.
Services throughout those as well.
Okay. So you have some familiarity then with the video production side, the graphic design side, as well as website development and that kind of thing. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. Before there was a staff, I guess, before I was able to get people to help, I was doing most of those, if not all of them.
All right.
So yeah, I have experience through video production, video editing software programs, the Adobe suites, website design is probably the weakest area, but I know how to utilize the website templates, such as Wix or all those things. I'm not a coder by any means.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into some of the. I've sent you the questionnaire, and let's get into some of that. Let's talk about personality profiles and where are you on that Myers-Briggs and things like that, if you know.
Well, I don't know if I've ever taken Myers-Briggs directly, but I have taken the DISC profile test. I don't know. And within the DISC profile test, I've taken it twice over the past probably 8 years. The first time I took it, I was a strong S, very steady, easygoing, goes with the flow. I'm still very strong in that personality. But what I've seen kind of develop more is that I being more relational with people. That has developed as I've gone and been in ministry, just because ministry runs on the track of relationships. So knowing how to build relationships has really grown in that. So that's my profile. If you were to ask people describe Justin, they would probably say easygoing. That's probably my strong trait. I will. Coming into a room, I'm more likely to sit back and analyze it and then engage rather than come in and say, hello, I'm here. But that's probably my profile.
Sure.
If you play some sports with me, I'm competitive in that nature. So I love to play sports, anything really, and I can get competitive, not in an angry way, but just in a fun, lighthearted way.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably the overarching view of my personality.
Sure. Okay. What about spiritual gifts? Where do you feel like the areas are, or area that God's gifted you?
I believe God's gifted me strong with mercy, with empathy, really feeling what people feel. One of my wives, maybe as we go through different situations with different relationships, maybe the thing my wife hates me to say the most is, well, I wonder what they're feeling. What is it, what are they going through that is causing them to react this way towards us or towards a situation? What caused them to say that? I wonder if there's a reason for the kind of hostility or whatever it may be. That's my go-to whenever there's
Sure.
conflict. I try to believe the best in people. One of a person that has influenced me has always said, assume the best. He said one of his greatest mistakes early on in ministry was he assumed the worst in people. Therefore, whenever they couldn't make it, whenever they couldn't do something, he assumed it was because of the worst. And
Sure.
then he learned quickly, because you need to just assume the best, and then it allows for grace.
Yeah.
When you
Sure.
assume the best.
Yeah.
So I think that's very strong. I think I have that in me. I also believe teaching, although it's very weird for me to say that because I never viewed myself growing up as becoming a teacher in any way. And now as I look at my life, I'm going, that's the track I am on and desire to be on. And so I believe teaching has become more strong, but I believe that is because of my empathy for people.
Sure.
When I try to speak to where they are, and I think that helps in my communication.
Yeah. Now, speaking of teaching, you've developed a school of worship, something along those lines there where you are, and you really have a heart and passion for that. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So school of worship is. It's not accredited, not anything like that, but what we use it for here is almost our assimilation process. It helps it gives people a place to go before they get to the platform, and a lot of that is due because we want to first and foremost we want to make sure the people on the platform have the character to support them on the platform. If they don't have character, they don't have integrity, they don't have a spiritual walk with God, I don't believe they should be in a place at the moment. I mean, they can grow, they can change, they can develop, but if they're going to make worship on the platform about themselves because of their lack of character, then we're actually not doing good for the church. We're actually harming the church, congregation in whole. And so the School of Worship was developed to really get to know people's character. And from that, we developed three levels to help them. It develops their character, but it also develops their understanding of worship, the importance of it and the role of it in the church. And we made a practical side of it where we would train them in their craft. So, and what I mean by craft are their instruments. Whether they're a guitar player, we would do a master class for guitar, teach them to be a better guitar player, to become proficient in whatever instrument they have. We would give them that, and then also give them spiritual foundations for that. So it was an 8-week long course that where really my focus wasn't to teach practical. My focus was to teach spiritual emphasis. So I spent my time. We devised them into 3 levels just to kind of give the people, when they're learning practically their instrument, you don't want an intermediate guitar player in the same class as a beginner guitar player, because they're going to waste their time. So we would separate them a little bit by their skill level. And then level 3 is what we called platform ready, meaning we're not going to teach you any more than what you already know. We really approached the teaching, the practical side of it, as preparing people to lead worship, not to play classical music, not to perform in a rock band or whatever, but just to play the worship music that is there. And so once we got them to a level where you can play pretty much any worship song that's out there right now, then we said you're platform ready. And then from the platform ready, we said skill-wise, you're platform ready. But let's look at your character. And so then for the ones that were platform ready, I would spend time with in a small group setting, and we would discuss spiritual foundations. We discuss their walk, pretty much kind of like what we're doing right now, just an interview as type over 8 weeks. And I would walk them through the tabernacle, the building, the elements of the tabernacle, the procedure of the Old Testament tabernacle, and how that has influenced actually modern worship today. And that was our school of worship.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that's
good. It's one of my favorite things. It really is that. Like I said, I think the spiritual gift of teaching has grown from that, and it's one of my favorite things in my position right now.
Yeah.
To do.
Wow. Well, that is exciting. Let's talk a little bit about worship styles, and I've heard you use the term modern instead of contemporary. In your mind, there may be a big distinction between that, and I think some people are using the word classical as opposed to traditional, or maybe there's a big distinction there. So let's talk a little bit about that, where your strengths are along those lines, and our preferences, and at some point I want to get a little bit into. I don't know how multi-generational your church is, but ours really is multi-generational, and so I've always heard that when it comes, that's the hardest church to lead. I think in some ways that's true, but particularly in the area of music, that's always a challenge. So let's talk a little bit about that. You just jump off wherever you want to.
Sorry, what was that?
I said just jump in wherever you want to.
Jump in. Well, first, I would probably say my approach to leading worship is to not lead out of my preferences, but lead from what the church needs. Lead from what the church, because my goal, my job, if you will, as a worship leader is not to connect people to my preferences of worship, but it's to connect people to God.
Sure.
And so when it comes to style, and again, I think style is all based on preferences. What do people prefer? How do they prefer to worship God? And so there's elements of that you challenge, right? There's elements of that you want to challenge their preferences so that they're not worshiping their preference, but rather they're worshiping God. And then there's other areas where you go, I'm going to utilize their preference to get them to worship God.
Sure.
Leverage it. And so when it comes to styles, when I say modern, I guess I would say what is coming out today, what is being recorded today. Contemporary to me does sound a little more probably 10, 20 years. And then when I said classical, I really meant classical music, Beethoven, Bach.
I see.
Really classically trained. And traditional to me would be more of the hymns. And at Sila Vista, we do have a multi-generational church. Our church, Sila Vista, is over 64 years old, and we have members that have been here for a long time, and it's a blessing to see them, and they have been gracious. They have been wonderful to embrace new things and challenges. But with that, there's always a desire of the old days, the older songs. And so what I have what I have done a lot in the past is I will in between songs, or strategically place probably a better way to say that, but strategically place a hymn chorus that reiterates what a modern song just sang. And with that, you sing this older hymn, this older chorus that really has nostalgia to it, because there's nostalgia in music, and that nostalgia actually inspires worship with both generations. Some generations are going, I've never heard that song before. That's a new one, and you're like, no, that's 100 years old. And so it really is it's all about leveraging, I believe, leveraging the styles to engage the congregation in worship. So I'm open to all styles, really.
Yeah.
Whatever is going to accomplish the goal of connecting people with the presence of God is what it's about.
Yeah. How do you, this is kind of chasing a rabbit here a little bit, how do you look at a song, a new song, I mean, I hear songs on the radio all the time that I like, but it won't necessarily translate to a good congregational song. So what do you look for to know that a song will engage, will draw people in to, not just what you're singing, not just the tune, obviously, but the song and the truth, the theology in the song?
Yeah, well, that's exactly, I think, what I'm looking at. I look at the lyrics more than the feel. There's some songs that, like you said, on the radio, oh man, I love this. I can dance to this, but what is being said isn't not that it's false, but the way it's being said is going to be more difficult for people to connect with.
Yeah.
And so there's been times in the past where there's a song that I really enjoy, that is speaking to me, but maybe there's a line in there that I'm going, I don't know about that line. I don't know about that word that they use there. And they could be all well-intended, and I'm not questioning their theology or questioning their intentions even, but I'm going to question whether or not that song is actually going to be impactful for our church, or whatever church I'm leading, congregation. Is it going to be impactful for them, or is that word, is that line, is that phrase going to be more of a distraction than it is going to be helpful? So that's the way I've kind of approached it.
Yeah.
There's been lines that I think I'm on the fence about. And so then I would go ask a pastor, a different pastor in the church to kind of go, hey, what are your thoughts on this line?
Sure.
This word. One example I can think of, and I love the song, and I believe their intentions were well when they wrote the song, but the song "So Will I" has a word that in one of the choruses, and it kind of alludes to, or kind of implies evolution. They use the word as all creation evolves in pursuit of what you said, and because of that one word, I love the song. I love the bridge. I love so much of what that song in totality is saying. But because of that one word, I asked our pastors here and said, would this be a distraction?
Sure.
Would people get lost in this? And so, in their opinions, they were like, yes. And it just kind of confirmed my thinking of this would just be more of a distraction at that time.
Sure.
So then you have other ideas of, like, you could remove that verse, you can change it all completely, but I just typically would just refrain from it.
Yeah. No, I get it. We've had those discussions. How do you see your role as a worship leader being on the platform, actually leading and making a concerted effort to engage people. How do you see that as a part of your role? And then how does that translate into what you actually do on the platform to make that happen?
Mm, okay, yeah.
I didn't send you that
Uh,
question, but it just popped
yeah,
in my head.
it,
So,
well, I think um, a lot of the role on a Sunday morning, if you will, because I believe worship is so much greater than just that Sunday morning
mm,
music time. It's really the entire service is a worship service. So from the sermon to the music to everyone going home and living their life the way they live, that to me is worship. So, but when you're talking specifically just about that time on the platform, I believe one of my main roles is to help people learn to express their love for God. Help them learn, whether that be a physical expression of hands being raised, audible expression, um, maybe just a prayerful expression. Um, the goal is to help people get to that point. How can you express your love
mm,
for God? And so with that, I probably lead vocally. I would lead them, spur them on vocally. I would spur them on with my body language myself. My body language would show expressions throughout the body or throughout biblical
sure,
expressions, uh, and, uh, and that's kind of what I view that time as.
sure.
Of course, it's all about directing their focus. Um, it's a lot like prayer. I teach a class. It's part of our overarching kind of volunteer class, and it's about the power of prayer and worship. And I use Matthew 6:9, where Jesus teaches how to pray. And the
Mm,
first thing he says there is, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name." And I use that line, and this is the same thing that I would say worship does on a Sunday. What it's
mm,
doing is that line, and what Jesus was teaching his disciples there was to reorientate your heart to the identity of who God is. He is a
mm,
father and he is holy. And these are two things that as we pray and as we worship, these have to be the foundations of that. It
mm-hmm,
has to our the way we approach God, the way we talk to God, we have to have that understanding and that belief, that foundation of He is a good Father, but He's
mm,
also extremely holy. He is set
mm,
apart completely, and there's that dichotomy of His transcendence and His eminence, um, uh, being right there, just in that first phrase. And so, a lot of that role on Sunday
mm.
is one, teaching them to express their love for God. And also helping reorientate our hearts to His true identity, who He
Sure.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. It does. Um, you mentioned Oksana. We've actually been working through God Dreams as a staff,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
boy, it's been difficult. We've been over a year. We've been trying to do that. Right now, it's kind of on hold, but it's been a
Yeah.
great exercise. We do want to finish, but so um, maybe you can give us some pointers along the way. It really is. I really do like,
Yeah.
but man, it's not the most simple visioning concept to work through.
It's not. Yeah. I
Yeah.
enjoy it once that picture gets painted. It
Mm-hmm.
really does bring so much clarity. The vision frame.
Yeah.
That really and we spent 9 months with an Auxano uh, consultant.
Mm-hmm.
He would come in and we would spend all day, one day a month for 9 months. We'd spend
Wow.
10 hours with this guy.
Yeah.
My panel, and he helped us really understand it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It was fun.
Well, we've really been
It
trying
was a
to,
lot of fun.
recast our vision along the lines of discipleship and
Mm-hmm.
moving people toward ministry and mission and how to do that in more purposeful ways. How do you see the role of worship leader fitting in with the whole, discipleship strategy, whether that's, bringing people to Christ or helping people who are already believers, take another step down the pathway of discipleship?
Mhm. I believe, like I said, I think one of the roles is to help people learn to express, and that extends beyond that time. Like I said on Sunday, that
Mm-hmm.
extends into how do you express your love for God with your relationships with people at work? How do you express your love for God with your relationships at home? How do it really is a much more bigger spectrum
Mm-hmm.
than just that time in the morning. So as what I've been doing here, it's that essentially it's teaching them that worship is not just this time of song, although songs are worship, but worship's not limited to songs. But worship is the way you live. It's the way you express your love to God, and with that, if that's kind of the definition, then you would have to then take what Jesus said and said, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. Or if you say, what's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And when you understand worship is me just simply responding to God's love with my expression of love, then discipleship,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what He has said, how to live, becomes very important. Because if you're going to express your love and He says, hey, the way you express your love to me is by obeying me, then you need to know what obeying Him looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what His commandments are. You need to know what truth is in order to truly respond to Him in that way. So that's kind of how I view it. It's worship is the expression and it's the obedience of it, but discipleship is the equipping to respond correctly.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses in your leadership style and just in the role you play as a worship pastor. What do you see as some of those, your strongest points, and then areas of weakness? It's hard to talk about, I know, but the scripture says Jesus perfects His power in our weaknesses. So it helps to know what those are.
Yeah. I think my strength is being able to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get distracted very easily with the new waves of different things. I would say once the aspect of, hey, this is the goal, like worship, what we kind of just discussed, then that is the goal. But to me, there's not. I think that's a strength of mine. It's not going to waver from that goal. If our job is to help people encounter God, if our job is to help people express their love, then that's going to be where we're going. I think a weakness of mine has been in the past conflict resolution. I typically, because of my easygoing nature, even kind of a caveat to my spiritual gift of mercy, where it's a little bit, I'm going to give them grace, and maybe I should address the problem, but because I don't necessarily like conflict, or I'm not very good at it, whatever the case may be, then conflict resolution kind of a little bit sometimes can go unaddressed for a little bit. I have learned, as John Maxwell has said, it's easier to shovel the pile while it's small. Don't let it grow, that is something that I've been working on these past few years. Just tackle it when it's in its genesis. Tackle it at the very beginning. If you wait, let it fester, it's just going to grow and it's going to be harder to manage. And so that has definitely been a weakness that I am actively getting better at. And my wife, who's very strong at conflict resolution, has been coaching me.
That's good. It's good sometimes that opposites attract, isn't it? Yeah.
It's very,
Yeah, it is. It is. Wow.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Uh, one of the questions is describe a disappointing or difficult season in your life or ministry and how you grew out of that. When you read that, did that bring up anything specific right away in your mind?
Um, not specific. I can think of um, I think reoccurring seasons maybe
Mm.
where it just everyone has highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and so there's seasons where there just seems to be a dryness
Mm.
um, to spiritual things, and I think everyone experiences that. You just drudge through them. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
go, nope, I know I'm not going to base my faith on my feeling right now. I'm going to keep pushing through, even though I may not feel God's presence or feel the Holy Spirit as I read His Word. It's still it doesn't change who my God's character is.
Sure.
That's my feeling, and so when I read that question, that's what I thought of. I thought of moments where I've just felt spiritually dry, but that's not necessarily the truth of the situation. I've experienced, our church has experienced a couple of leaders that have fallen morally. I think I
Mm-hmm.
shared that with you in one of our phone calls. And those seasons were kind of difficult. One was a youth pastor. One was a youth pastor that that helped me form, right? Like he helped form me, and he's the one that allowed me to go to the school of worship and come back. And then during the season when I came back, there was some moral behavior, and that was hard to handle and to walk through, and um, to see the
Mm.
brokenness of both sides.
Sure.
That was challenging, and I think what I learned from any of that is, man, anyone is susceptible to sin. Um, have to be vigilant in your walk and vigilant in your character, and
Mm.
don't put yourself in positions that can compromise that. And because so quickly the enemy can snare anybody, and so uh, yeah, those were hard seasons.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Talk a little bit about what, other than the scripture, what books, authors has God used to influence you, either personally or professionally?
yeah, I read a book, probably, and this has formed a lot of my perspective of worship. It's called How to Worship a King
Mm.
by Zach Neese. Um, he's a worship pastor in Dallas, and he wrote that book. He really is has influenced me in that book, and has influenced me in that approach of looking at worship and worship services as a pattern of the tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it was a very powerful book, influential book in
Mm.
my personal life, but also in the way I approach leading worship and leading a worship team.
Mm-hmm.
Another book that has I just love, and I go back to it because the guy that wrote it, he's very much cerebral thinker, and very very much deep, where you have to read a sentence 3 or 4 times to really understand what he's saying. But it is a book called Celebrate Disciplines by Richard
Richard
Foster.
Foster. Yep.
Yeah, and that book, wow, that book has impacted me spiritually, like personally,
Mm-hmm.
and I that that book can be a discipleship tool in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
As long as you can weed through a little bit of the maybe fringe comments and fringe thoughts
Sure.
that he
Yeah.
has, but that book was very very impactful for me. Those two really over the past 5 years have been the best two books I've read.
Yeah.
I've read other books, from John Maxwell books for leadership training and all those things, which were good and great, but I to me they don't reach the level of what those two books have impacted me with.
Sure. Yeah. Any of Henry Blackaby's stuff or the Blackabys? Are you familiar with
Yes.
their work and
Oh my goodness.
experiencing God and
Experiencing God, yes, I read that one. Uh, there was another one by him that I read. We're going through that actually. So another aspect of my role that's very small, because of the leadership team that's in place, but it's just a pastoral oversight of our young adults ministry, and really hardly anything to do. Just kind of check in with them, check in with the leaders, and go, how are you guys doing? What's in spiritually discipling them is really that role. But we're going through as a young adults leadership team. He wrote a Experiencing God study book for young adults, and so we've been going through that as well together.
okay?
It's a unique thing. It's a 5-day or 5-day kind of week chapter. You go day by day, and it's a good book.
Okay.
It's a great book.
Tell me a little bit about your personal devotional life and prayer life, and how that translates into spiritual leadership in your home with your family.
Yeah, that's I am not a morning person, so a lot of times my Bible reading or Bible studying does not happen in the morning. I wish I was a morning person, because I've gone through stints of my life where I forced myself to wake up and wake up early and get that stuff done. With 3 kids, it's kind of hard to do that in the morning anyways. And so a lot of my reading and devotional time or prayer time comes when it can happen. A lot of my prayers done in the shower. Is that as weird as that may sound? But just talking with God and going, okay, Lord, here we go. Here's the day. This is the 10 minutes I have as I get ready. And a lot of reading is done kind of just throughout the day as time can happen. And I'm currently going through Charles Swindoll. He wrote a study Bible, and so I'm kind of reading through that Bible and going through a lot of his commentaries and studying the Bible through that, along with a lot of my school study is Bible related.
Sure.
And, so right now, a lot of it is done academically, which can be challenging, because I think sometimes when you read the Bible academically, you sometimes lose the heart of it, because you're kind of reading it for a class. I'm trying to answer a question. Here we go, and so. I have to get out of that reading mindset for a little bit, and do it that way. As far as with my family, me and my wife, my wife does an amazing job leading, because a lot of times on Sunday morning, even right now, I'm still having to be at the church building to make sure everythings are functioning well. So she's been picking it up, and she'll send videos of them like worshiping, and they'll be singing in the living room together. I'll have with my boys, I really have intentional conversations with them, and just go, what are your thoughts on sin? What is sin? And we'll talk through that. Just recently, my middle child, when we were kind of discussing sin, his eyes already started watering up, and I was like, oh, is this the moment, Lord? Here we go. But unfortunately, not yet. I think he still has some understanding and learning to know before all that.
Sure. Yeah. How old are the boys again? Tell me the ages.
My boys, my oldest is 7. Middle one is 5, and the littlest is 4.
Okay. Wow.
So it's you can see now how the morning can get away from you real fast with 3
Oh
boys.
yeah, man, I know.
all
Yeah,
age.
yeah. I've lived through that with 5 kids. We homeschooled all 5, so we had a K through
Yeah.
12 at some point in the house. So I get that. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
A lot of my Bible reading personally happens at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll read at night.
Okay.
While they're asleep.
Yeah.
Quiet.
No, I get it. Tell me about the software things you're familiar with: worship software, Pro Presenter, Pro Tools, Ableton, Logic, those things, and maybe other things, and what your experience is working with those.
So we use Pro Presenter right now in our church. That was the first one you mentioned. I know that they just came out with an update, Pro Presenter 7, so I don't know the changes to it quite yet. We haven't updated ours because I typically think, okay, software, when it first comes out, it's going to have bugs. It's going to have its all little hiccups. And so we wait probably a year before we upgrade a program like that, because by that time all the bugs would be fixed. And something as crucial as Pro Presenter being a major display tool that we use on a Sunday, we don't want that one finicky on a Sunday. We want to make sure that it is solid. There's no questions, no worries. And so we're still in Pro Presenter 6, but know all the ins and outs of that program. So much you can do with it. It's a very powerful program. We use Logic and Sunday every day, or every Sunday. I would say that Ableton and Logic we use every Sunday. We use Ableton to help run multi-tracks. There's supplemental tracks to help a band. Comes with a click track, so you got this click track and a guide. It's fairly comical if you're new to it, but it's very extremely helpful with communicating band music arrangements, songs arrangements, and all that stuff. So I know the ins and outs of Ableton. I know we use Logic to record the services, to listen back a lot. What has been a growing experience is as that worship staff on Monday I was telling you about, we would go back and we would I called it film. I grew up playing sports, and so watching film was not foreign to me. You watch what you did. Did you do it right? Did you do it wrong? How could you improve what you did? And so what I did with my two assistants and that worship staff is we recorded our Sundays, and we would bring it into the film room and watch it back, and we would learn, what did we do well there? What can we improve? All that stuff. So we used Logic to accomplish that. And we were able to isolate tracks to really hear, hey, this part of the song sounded weird. Let's find out why. And then you isolate the tracks and find out, oh, it's because this person was singing that. And that's what created the tension of the music. And so Logic and Ableton are programs I'm familiar with. Like I said, we use them all the time. Those are the 3 primary ones we use. Again, there's video editing software, all those other programs. There's one of my predominant instruments is piano or keys, and so I learned different softwares that help with patches of piano sounds. And different things like that as well, such as MainStage or different things, like different softwares. There's so many out there. I mean, we could talk for a long time about software and different things, but
well, that's good enough, I think, to give I'm not the guy that's in the know about that, but the people who are in the know, that's good enough to help them know where you are. And as far as audio mixing and that kind of thing, what's your level of experience there with all that?
Well, never been. When I went to New Life in that school of worship, there was a class on audio mixing. That's it, to the extent of my formal training, if you will. But I've been I've led worship in the youth ministry where there was no sound guy, so I was running back and forth, helping, mixing as much as I can, giving some input. Even with our sound guy now, who is more trained, giving him input and him teaching me some tricks and different things, and so I'm comfortable around soundboards. I understand there's a general language with soundboards that I can speak to an extent.
Okay.
Because that's something that when it comes to leading a band and leading all of that, each area has a different language that you have to go, hey, play dynamically bigger here, versus you got to tell the sound guy, hey, we need more head amp space here, or more gain, whatever words you want to use.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of formulate a little bit of a language for each area. And I've been leading worship for 10 years now, so I've learned what not to say that doesn't make any sense, and what to say that makes sense.
Yeah. In a normal worship environment that's non-COVID, I'm guessing sometimes you lead from a keyboard, sometimes with a guitar. Is that non-COVID? Majority of the time is guitar. Okay. Is that your comfort zone, leading with the guitar?
I mean, having an instrument is probably my comfort zone.
Okay.
With no instrument is a little more of the what do I do with my hands type thing.
Yeah.
Or what do I do? You know, so leading from an instrument is predominantly my comfort zone, whether that be piano or guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar. I am not proficient in. I can play it, but it's not. I would not say, hey, put me on electric, I'll shred. It's not that at all.
And are you comfortable with multiple instruments in the band and on the platform?
Again, I can fake my way. I'll say this: I can play piano and I can play acoustic guitar well. I can fake my way through the drums.
I mean, with the instrument, other people playing. That's what I mean, with other people playing and other instruments. Yeah. So yeah. So we've had electric guitar, bass, drums, violinist, cellist, a guy on the trumpet, guy on the mandolin. We've had all of those up there at once at some point, and wow. That can be. I mean, I'm sure that can be a challenge.
It can be. But I mean, I think everything has its space. Everything has its sonic space that it accompanies. And so if you can manage understanding where each instrument is going to fall into that sonic frequency kind of range, then you can manage that. Okay. That's all done in the pre, though. That stuff has to be prearranged, and it'd be more difficult to show up on a Sunday and go, hey, here's a trumpet you didn't know about. Something like that.
All right. Well, here's the last question for the video. All right. You've seen some of our stuff and talked to Steve about our church and our situation, and what do you feel like connects in your own heart with you and with us? And where do you feel like that is? And that's not a trick question, by the way. So
no, yeah. I think the first thing that connected my heart with Grace Life is probably the words of Steve when he said you were one of the best pastor that he has experienced in his life. And
I still haven't sent him the check for that, but I'll get.
and Steve has just been such a mentor and influence in my life that when he says something like that, it carries a lot of weight. And so there's an element of just trust that I already have in you via the relationship of Steve. And that's endearing. And then just even in our conversations and watching some of the preaching, the lessons and stuff, there's to me, I already have a trust in you, and that's based on the relationship with probably Steve. And then watching kind of just different things from your worship ministry, I just see a lot of strengths that you guys have already. For example, all the videos I've seen pretty much have the same worship team, same people, and so that tells me there's a lot of commitment there from them, and that's encouraging to see. And there's talent. I mean, there's talent there that everyone that I see they can play. There's the areas in which I believe I can help strengthen them, and
Sure.
and we can get better. But that's with everyone. And so that's exciting and endearing to me. Is that there's potential. There's a lot of potential for a lot of good things to come about. Now, again, I don't know them personally. I've never had conversation with them, and so outside looking in, hearts look all great, and everyone's character looks all great. But I don't know how the inner workings of relationships are, so that's always an unknown until actually knowing people.
Yeah.
But I mean, out from that, I can see so much of my family in what I see you guys doing. So much of Sila Vista in what you guys are doing. Like you said, multi-generational. We're very multi-generational. So much. There's so many similarities in which I see from the outside again.
Sure.
Looking in.
No, that's good. It's good. And God has given us, talented people and really good-hearted people who are growing in their walk with the Lord, and they really do want to serve in that area, and they do. They serve well and faithfully, and even as we've talked about going to 2 services in a few weeks, they're all in, and we'll do both services, and so that is a blessing,
That definitely is. I mean, I've experienced where people don't like that commitment level, because it's a high commitment level. Because that what you see on a Sunday is 1 hour of their preparation throughout the week.
Yeah.
It's so much more than what that. And so seeing them constantly has been encouraging to see.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I think that's good, and I'm getting ready to turn the video off. And so, thank you for joining in. Thank you for allowing me to record. All right.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak and share.
Amen.